Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is our core choreography competition, Artist Talks, episode 5. Over the past few weeks, we have
Good
been...
evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Is
Sorry,
our
is
core
our...
competition, Artist Talks.
Okay, sorry about that. So over the past few weeks, we've been going live every Tuesday to speak with the semi-finalists of our choreography competition, C3. And this is the competition that we launched in 2019. And we want to give them space to share their thoughts and perspectives and to learn more about their work. And the winner of C3 will get a commission to set a new work on CHEN Project dancers for our next season, which we are aiming for fall 2021. So you can stay tuned for updates. My name is Jessica Chen, and I am Artistic Director of CHEN Project and one of your hosts this evening. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers, and I occupy stolen land of the Lenape people, which is currently referred to as Midtown Manhattan, New York. And joining me tonight is Neysha, my co-host.
Hi, my name is Neysha. I am a CHEN Project dancer. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I am also on Muncie Lenape land, otherwise known as Brooklyn, New York. So every week, we have a couple of different events and news and organizations in the dance community that have been inspiring us during this time that we would like to highlight, as well as updates from the company. We would like to highlight the Dance Studio Alliance for their efforts to save the future of dance in New York City. Last week, we had a guest speaker who was one of the leaders of this initiative. Pavan of PMT Dance Studios shared with us a petition that they have started to ask Governor Cuomo and Mayor de Blasio to help dance studios reopen. In the last episode, they were at almost 8,000 signatures, and now that they're over 9,000. So that's more than 1,000 signatures within a week, which is absolutely amazing. I think everyone who has signed that petition is very important and like near and dear to our hearts as dancers to get these things reopened. If you haven't signed yet, we will drop a link in the chat box. So please sign that so we can get to 10K signatures and, get to dancing again. So tonight, we want to announce some exciting news for fall events from CHEN Project. We will be sending a newsletter out this week, but you all here right now will be hearing it first. So the first is our performance lab, E Pluribus Unum. CHEN Project has been selected to join in an evening featuring an eclectic mix of multiple genre performances to celebrate the diversity of America and get the vote out. So next Saturday, October 24th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, join us there. This event is presented by Talking Cat Arts and Entertainment and features uplifting performances, a Q&A with musical dance artists, including #America, guitar virtuoso Benjamin Verdery, and CHEN Project. So it's a free event, and we will drop this in the Eventbrite. We'll drop the Eventbrite in the chat box here as well. The second thing is the Brooklyn Bridge Park has created an open studios program for companies to rehearse at the park, which is really awesome. Get to connect to nature next Sunday, on October 25th at 3:30 p.m. CHEN Project will be rehearsing for 2 hours at the Plaza of Harborview Lawn at Pier 1. So come and say hi, see us dance. We will include a Google Maps link for you all in the chat box. The last and third announcement is for our video premiere and launch party. I Can Almost See You has been reimagined as a dance film. It will premiere on Sunday, November 1st at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our YouTube channel right here. We will have a launch party that starts at 7 p.m. via Zoom webinar and Facebook Live, so you can join on any platform. Join us as JCP dancer Rafael Sanchez, teaches us how to make a special CHEN Project themed cocktail. And I will be moderating a discussion with your creatives of the film, Jessica, our choreographer up here, Jay, our dancer, and Tony Yang, the composer. So we will have a cheers, we'll watch the video together, and then come back for a beautiful Q&A. We will also link that in the chat box. Thanks. That was a lot today. I did well. All right, back to you, Jessica.
Okay, thank you, Neysha. Yes, that's a lot from the company. We've been busy working, and these are the first times we're making those announcements, so you guys have the insider scoop. But we will be sending a newsletter out this week that has more details and dates and everything like that. So check that out and sign up on our mailing list if you're not already. You can do that through our website. So if you're joining us this evening, we are asking if you can please comment in the chat box so that we know that who is here with us. Please include any comments or questions that you may have for our panelists. Neysha will be gathering the questions for the panel discussion towards the end of the show tonight. And okay, let's get started. So we'll say goodbye to Neysha. We'll see her back in a little bit. And our first guest of this evening is Jillian Mitchell. Jillian.
Hello.
Jillian, hi. Jillian, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background?
Sure. Thank you, Jessica and Neysha, and thanks so much for having me on. I am Jillian Mitchell, she, her, hers, and I am on Muskogee land, and that is in Atlanta, Georgia. So I am the founder and director of Kit Modus, which is a contemporary dance company in residence at Callenwald Fine Arts Center here in Atlanta. And my story with dance goes back as far as I can remember. So I think one of my first most vivid memories is recognizing that dance existed, and in that exact same moment was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So there wasn't really anything else for me. From the beginning, that was going to be what I was going to choose as a career. So my mom bought me these like cute little ballet slippers, and she was like, oh, you can prance around the house in them and it'll be so cute. And I was like, out of like maybe 3 or 4, I was like, this is not cute, this is serious, like please take me to ballet class now, I need to start training. So you know, my mother was very industrious and very research oriented in terms of finding the right pathway for me. And this was like before the internet existed. So to age myself, that will give away a little something, but I don't even know how she did it, but she found a pathway through talking to other people to get me in the right hands and to train well in ballet. Which landed me in Milligan School of Ballet, which is a wonderful teacher by the name of Karen Milligan in Michigan, who trained me as far as she possibly could. And when I was about 14, she was like, okay, that's all I can offer you. And if you really want to do this as a career, you're going to want to go away to school. So she told me to research National Ballet School in Canada. And so I went there for a summer, although it was academically pretty intense, and I wasn't the greatest student because remember when I was 4 years old, I was like, I'm gonna be a ballerina. So I was like, who needs math? So academically didn't really mesh with National Ballet there. So I found my way to the Herod Conservatory in Florida. And I was accepted to study in their year-round program. So at 15 years of age, I went away to boarding school to train pretty intensely. And then after 2 years there, I had, Herod is a very intense, very small program. And I was a little bit rebellious. So I was doing okay in ballet, but I found myself wanting to be mischievous in some ways that didn't really jive with the really strict nature of how they operate there, which my mother loved because it meant that I was safe and in good hands. But they actually said, you know, we have ties to Royal Winnipeg Ballet, and you're going to get the same level of training there, but you're going to have a little bit more freedom to be yourself and less under the microscope in this small setting. So they kind of forged a path for me to transfer my senior year to Royal Winnipeg Ballet School, where I graduated from. And so up to that point, I think my next step was going to be to continue training, because I was 18 and I felt like I needed a little more time in the oven to be like super ready for a performing career. And so my intention was to find like a gap year program, or, you know, I was kind of on the hunt for just one more final year of training before I went and did the audition circuit. But then I went home to visit my family, as you do during the summers when you're training. And I just took a master class with this like Russian ballet master person by the name of Luba Gulyeva. And she just very strictly came up to me at the end of class, and she didn't ask me, she told me, she's like, "You're coming to New Jersey Ballet now." And I was like, okay, cool. And what I had found myself in was my first job. You know, I received a contract to dance professionally with New Jersey Ballet, which was a phenomenal place to be fresh out of high school. And I think in some ways, it almost limited my ability to recognize how hard it is to get a job, because it was like, oh, like you just go from one school to the next and then somebody just hands you a job, when the reality is that that just so happened to be, you know, a really, really lucky chance. But I think that it prevented me from really recognizing like the value of the job that I had and the opportunities that I had. And I think it made me not strive as hard as I possibly could have once I got into the company. So in short, I was a little bit spoiled, and I'll circle back to that later because I'm definitely no longer that. So I did maybe 4 seasons there, and it was wonderful, and I worked, you know, as hard as I could. But I did reach a point where like I was still quite young, and I felt like I had never done anything but ballet. And I was also starting to get, you know, like a boyfriend and have a social life. And I saw them like going out and doing all these things that I could often not do because I had a performance the next day. And also just this very basic thing that kind of sounds silly is like, I wake up and put tights on every single day. Like, I just want to I just want to put people clothes on. So I started to really like wonder what it was like to be a normal pedestrian person. And felt like my time at New Jersey Ballet was kind of coming to a close. And at the same time, I was told by the directorship that like with my height, I'm a very tall dancer, and with the way that I dance, they were like, we basically would either need to make you a principal dancer or get rid of you, because you're like different than everybody else in the company and you're not quite strong enough to be a principal, so we don't know what to do with you. And they recommended that I like go to another company. And I just remember like the director saying like, you just need to be a star, but I can't make you a star, but go be a star somewhere else. And so I probably should have like taken that and like gone to auditions and stuff, but my mind was just like, I was running out of energy to do the ballet thing, and I just wanted a break. And so I just kind of quit. I moved to Philadelphia with a bunch of friends. We got an apartment together, and I didn't think about dancing at all. And I didn't have like super huge aspirations about like taking a different career path. I just wanted to be normal. I waited tables, and I like went to bars at night, and, you know, like met friends outside and like did things in parks, and just enjoyed, I guess, in some ways, like a little bit of the childhood that I sort of missed out on because of ballet, even though I chose it. I just needed to like live that like normal life for a little while. So I did that, and then fast forward to like, maybe I did it for a little bit too long. Because, you know, even when somebody would ask me like, hey, are you ever going to dance again or something? I would like get angry and, you know, have like an emotional outburst. Like, I don't want to talk about it. And then I started having panic attacks, and it occurred to me like in the depths of one of these panic attacks that like, it likely had a lot to do with the fact that I was denying like this huge piece of my soul and like this this thing that I was like, you know, found purpose in. And I suddenly realized, oh my God, like I am meant to be a dancer and I'm just like throwing it away. What am I doing? And I started freaking out and like worrying about like, okay, I lost all this time and how do I get it back? And like, that was like supposed to be the peak of my career. And here I am just like out of shape, waiting tables in Philly with my friends. Like, so I completely like took a 180 and asked my parents to let me move back in with them. And I was like, I just need to hit the reset button. And I just started taking class every single day and getting back in shape and hopefully earning my second chance, which that made me realize that I had taken it for granted and like being handed that job and like sliding from one school to the next and just going up through the ranks and relying on like my natural talent and ability and, you know, having strong training. It's like, no, actually, this is really hard and this is challenging and this is something that you need to work for. And so once that was all gone, I approached class differently. I approached opportunities differently. And I really came to appreciate my career in the way that I always should have. So luckily, I was able to get back in shape and I had the pleasure of, again, randomly taking class with the right person. There's a woman by the name of Meg Paul in Michigan, who's the head of dance at Wayne State University, and she's fantastic in every way. And I took her class, and after she was like, "Who are you?" And you know, so we met and got along quite well. And she was like, "Well, I just so happen to be doing this like big show at the Detroit Opera House, or sorry, music hall, and it's like inviting, it's like the stars of ballet and Broadway. So there's all these like big stars from major companies internationally, and you know, an element of that show is to be in a creation process with a choreographer, and it's gonna culminate into the performance, and I'd like for you to be in that aspect." So it was like a 10 or 15 day intensive everyday process. We're gonna create this like world premiere contemporary work, and then you're gonna dance it. And it was very well paid. And I was like, okay, finally, like this is like my re-entrance back into the dance world. This is so awesome. And so of course I said yes. And then, by the way, I was always like quite the bun-heady classical ballet dancer. Like two ways to absolutely terrify me would be to say improv, or to say contemporary, or like go down to the floor, or anything that wasn't strictly classical ballet. Scared the crap out of me, and I knew that needed to be changed. So in this process with this choreographer, I just remember this like one really pivotal moment. And by the way, his name was Ron DeJesus. And he probably doesn't remember me, and it's very cool that I'm fine with that, but it's like he like made me take a pivot as well. He just asked us to like create shapes that we had never seen before. And I kept like doing the, like as this like bunhead, I kept like doing these like typical like shapes that were like maybe ballet but distorted. And he was just standing there with his arms crossed, just being like, nope, I've seen that before. Nope, that's ballet. Nope, that's not it. And I realized like in my failure, like sure, it was embarrassing, but it was also like, holy crap, like I do not have the vocabulary that's required to do this thing. So it made me recognize like whatever it was that made me fear contemporary and improv, like I needed to face that head on. It's not going to go away just because you're not comfortable with it. And I was like, I got it. If I really want to call myself a dancer and not just a ballet dancer, I need to acknowledge this missing piece about myself. So I threw myself into the process and probably failed at every turn, but the lights had come on and I was like, I want to do contemporary. I want to be, you know, good at this. And I remember at one point I was standing on the side watching his piece and like I was just sobbing, and he came over to me. He thought that I was sobbing because like I wasn't doing that well in the piece, and he was like, hey, don't worry, like it'll get better, like you're gonna get there, the performance is gonna be fine. And I was like, oh, thank you, like I'm sure it will be, but also I'm just crying because this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And we just like had a moment where we stood there and he was like, yeah, it really is, isn't it? And it was just like a moment where I was like, I want to do contemporary. So after that process, I joined a company in Philadelphia that, again, she was giving me a chance, like knowing that I had this like strong technical background, but maybe wasn't so great at contemporary. She gave me a chance, and she said, I'll give you this job, but you have to take modern every week. And so I had to take this extra class to like keep my job, which also really helped push me along. And again, she was generous enough to let me fail in rehearsal until I stopped failing, until it became a part of who I was as a dancer. And I'm really grateful to her for that. And that was Rebecca Davis, who is the director of Mind Leaps, which now does a lot of work in Africa. So after that, I joined a couple different contemporary companies. I know I'm talking too much, so I'm going to try to speed this along. I found myself in Atlanta, Georgia, and dancing with Georgia Ballet. Connected really well with the choreographer director there, who then broke off and started his own company. And I was so satisfied by that process. And I felt like the way that he merged classical ballet and this appreciation for the line of classicism and used that as a tool in his contemporary choreography was a perfect fit for me. So I had some really good, satisfying years of doing that work. And I think that that also further defined my aesthetic, which is like, I love ballet. I love to see that line. And I love to see the training in the body. But I also love to see it broken and thrown away and just on the other side of things. So we all kind of worked really hard to make his company take off and believed in him as an artist. And that was probably about 4 years before I realized that he was not a person that really could take a vision and put it into practical terms and really make the company take off. So after a while, we kind of ran out of steam and realized this wasn't really going anywhere. But in the process of me inserting myself into board meetings and marketing opportunities and trying to help push the company along as also the principal dancer, I recognized that I was also learning how to run a company and also recognizing where there were failures from leadership and how I would change it. And so in a really organic way, I was hands-on in a mentorship situation where I was learning to do what I would later do, which is start a company. And so when his project folded, the first thing I did was like, okay, well, what else is there in Atlanta? Like, I'm definitely going to be here in Atlanta, you know, forever now. But what else is in this community? And I looked around and I wasn't fully satisfied by what I was seeing. And I was like, man, I really wish there were more places to go and dance here. And I was like, I hope somebody starts something and then I'll join that. And then it wasn't long before I realized that, like, hey, like, maybe it should be you. Maybe you should start something. And so I did. And then coincidentally, right around that time, I got a random call from someone who's now a very, very dear friend, Gerald Ann Warner. She said, hey, I have this space, this dance space, beautiful studios in a fine arts institution. And it's like this gorgeous, like Tudor style mansion that sits in the middle of Atlanta. And like, you know, I also have this like deep appreciation for like quaint mansion. So I was like, really? It's this like beautiful castle-esque place. And she was like, yeah, I just like really want somebody that is going to take this space and do something amazing with it. And I'm wondering if like maybe you're that person. And I was like, weird. I was just thinking about starting a company. And she was like, not weird, probably meant to be. Let's do it. So I got some friends together from the dance community and Kit Modus began to take shape. And that was in May of 2017. And here we are today. And I think that I have hopefully made an impact on the Atlanta dance community. The landscape of our arts community has changed drastically just in those 3 years. Some of it has to do with my additional offering to the community and just everyone in general having that feeling like there's no reason why Atlanta can't be a destination for dance. And so I think we're all really working hard together to make it a place that someday some dancer might say, hey, maybe I'll just move to Atlanta and just dance there. So that's the goal. And yeah, I have my residency, my company, and I teach a ballet class most weekdays. And that's the other thing that I'm putting a lot of energy into right now is I'm building a very distinctive contemporary ballet class. And I'm not going to say that I'm codifying it, but I think that what I have to offer in terms of, I know there are a lot of conversations happening right now, like these companies are taking ballet class and then they're doing contemporary work, and what is the thread between them, and how do we stop them from getting injured? And the class that I'm developing, I think really has some significant things to say about that. So I will surrender the spotlight.
Hi, Jillian. Before we let you go, that was so great. When you say the moment that there was a moment that you wanted to do contemporary dance, can you describe what that moment was? Like, what is it about contemporary dance that you connect with? Like, what was that?
I think that it's partially that the options are endless. With ballet, the options are also endless, and there's something beautiful about how you can take that structure and you can come up with an endless combination of movements. But it lacks, and I say this with hesitation, it can lack groove. Although I do think that like some of these like even balanchine sometimes has groove, you know? But it was like, sometimes I felt like as a ballet dancer that I was hitting shapes and poses and I was executing an art form, but I wasn't dancing. Like it like didn't have that like feeling of like really like letting go and grooving. And I guess it was like that it was cool. Like it was so cool to me. And I was like, oh, I don't feel like a cool dancer. I feel like a beautiful, elegant dancer. And I wanted to feel cool. And I wanted to feel like recognized by other dancers that like I was able to function in my body like in a super versatile way. And I wanted to get rid of that, like, oh no, I have a limitation. I don't do that, you know, and I just wanted to like eradicate that fear, you know.
Cool. Kind of, yeah, no limits, no boundaries on stage.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay, amazing. So we're going to say bye to Jillian for a bit, but if you have any questions for her, please drop it into our chat box. We'll bring her back at the end for our panel discussion. And so now we are going to our second guest of the evening. We have Belinda Adam. Hi, Belinda. Are you out there? There you are.
Hi, everyone.
Belinda, hi.
Can you hear me?
Introduce? Yes, we can hear you. Perfect. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Jessica and CHEN Project for creating this platform for all of us artists to be able to share a little bit about ourselves and our work and get to know each other. So I was born in Indonesia of Chinese Indonesian descent. So I moved to the States when I was 18. So that was 11 years ago. I guess I'm gonna start with my relationship to getting to know dance and movement. I started dancing when I was 3. I grew up in a small town in Indonesia called Medan. And I didn't have a lot of formal training. I did ballet my whole life because that was the only dance studio that was available back home. And also because it's a small town, my mom knows the owner of the studio owner. So yeah, and she put me in dance class because I was an active kid and I love moving, I love performing. But I didn't really necessarily have a formal training per se. So apologies, I totally forget to talk about my pronouns and the land of acknowledgement. I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna start over. I'm Belinda Adam. I go by she or her. And I am in Brooklyn right now. So it is, my land of acknowledgement is called the Muncie Lenape land. So yeah, so back to my story. I was in Indonesia and we didn't have a formal training because there was no internet access and it was a small town. So pretty much I would say that I was a self-trained dancer because we only train from one teacher. And for a long time, I didn't understand that different bodies work differently. And I remember when I was little, I was always very frustrated when I wasn't able to do something. But not until that I came to the States when I was 18 that I was exposed to different genres of dance. And I went to Santa Monica College. So that's where I first was exposed to different genres of dance, such as modern, jazz, lyrical. I got a taste of everything. I soak it all up. Um, Not until then that I understand that, you know, different bodies move differently and it needs different things and express itself differently. So I was in Santa Monica College, and then I graduated and I transferred to Chapman University. And that was when I get to meet my creative partner. Her name is Talia Moreta. And in Chapman University, I met her, and then I also met this woman. Her name is Holly Johnston, and I remember that that was a pivoting moment in my life because I felt like something about dance drew me to it. I love movement, I love performing, but I didn't necessarily know the connectivity behind it and um, why I was interested and what about it. So I feel like getting to know them, they're the people who basically connect the dots for me and who exposed me to all these like different kinds of realities and understanding. And it it feels like getting to know dance through their lens. It makes me understand my humanness more. So I think that was what's pivotal for me. And I also feel like that was the moment when I slowly discovered my artistry, and it evolves with me, it changed with me as I grow and evolve personally. And upon graduating from Chapman University, I moved to New York City, and I have been creating with my creative partner, Talia Moreta, since we were both together at Chapman University. And what's great about Chapman is that they offer a lot of opportunities for students to produce our own show and work with our peers. So we get to work a lot with each other and kind of like develop our own vocabularies and language and expand our interests when it comes to creating work together. So I moved to New York City, and right after graduation, the first year in New York, I was hustling to get my artist visa in order to stay in the States. And we love creating together. So we started our own collective called Suku Dance Lab. And so we were creating together through that platform and also producing work in order to vamp up my resume in order to apply for my artist visa. So it's kind of like knocking two birds with one stone. That was exhausting and traumatizing, you know, not the creation process, but it's the amount of thing that I have to do in order to fulfill all that box that's created within the system in order to stay in the country. That process is exhausting. But nonetheless, you know, I feel like my limitation, it did push me to hustle, to, you know, to expose myself, to learn things in the speed and in in ways that I probably would not have put myself through if I wouldn't have to, I wouldn't have put myself through without these limitations. So there's definitely a positive side to that. So yeah, I was in New York City, we're creating, and also I was auditioning, and I became a founding company member with this femme identifying contemporary dance company called Michiaya Dance, and we've been dancing together and collaborating together since they started 5 years ago. That was when I first moved to New York. So I pretty much found my community right away. I was fortunate to have that, and we've been growing together since then. So I feel like, with Michiaya, I get to exercise my interests and my interests as a dancer. I get to discover and explore my own relationship to my physical body. And with Suku Dance Lab, I get to wear a different cap, and I like to alternate between two because I feel like they inform each other, being a creator and a dancer. As a creator, I'm using all this information that I get as a dancer and put them through a lens in which I examine community, because I think the passion and the source of creating, dancing, being a performance artist in general is they all come from the same passion and the same source for me. And the source is to navigate my humanness, to understand myself and to be understood, and to understand others as well. Because I feel like a lot of my work and curiosity, it comes from that. It comes from that identity, my identity as a queer immigrant woman. So yeah, we've been creating work, storytelling. I'm experimenting with physical movement, storytelling, and I like to also incorporate various medium of time and different structures of reality, and combining all of these that I'm curious in to as a way to find out and learn how us as a human and as a society that we're all similar. We're all unique in our own individuality, but we're also universal as a whole. And I think I'm navigating a lot of my practice through that lens. So yeah, I think that's all I have in mind that I want to share with with all of you.
Belinda, I thank you so much for sharing. I would love to hear more about what you've learned during quarantine and this year, and how your work has shifted, or if it's shifted, or how this time has informed the ways that you practice your work.
I see. I feel like during this quarantine, definitely, it has given me the time and space to think bigger outside of being in survival mode, as an artist in New York. And I also feel like I have the space to re-examine how I have approached my practice as an artist, because I feel like we've all been hustling to climb that ladder, to, and also I feel like just in my story personally, having to keep on producing and producing, being involved in things that will give me the, ticks in order to qualify to remain here in the States. I feel like a lot of my hustle and my productivity has come from that space. And I feel like we all can relate to that to a certain degree. So I have been appreciative of these break in a way that I was able to step back and take a deep breath and reconnect with my purpose as a human being first, and then an artist. Because I feel like we're all artists, and I feel like those two get all mixed up, and because we're passionate and we're putting all of us in our work. But I feel like this quarantine has kind of like given me the space to learn about boundaries, and also the boundaries that interchanges within those two identities that are very important to me. So yeah, and I've been using that time to kind of, with these limitation also, like I wasn't able to dance in the studio and like move the way I used to move, and rolling on the floor, like just like the luxury of like having a huge space to express my body. I feel like those limitations has kind of like pushed me to find nuances in different ways of expressing my creativity. So I was able to kind of like veer off to different things that sparks my curiosity and gives me this feeling of like, this butterfly feeling when it comes to creating and dancing. Like I have to like find it in other ways. And I feel like it's kind of like changing glasses. Like I was able to kind of like take a detour to practice different things, different art forms that I would love to take all of these new information that I learned from doing other things outside of dance to inform my work again, and find how those things intersect between my, within my interest. So I think that's like, that's exciting. Yeah.
And before we let you go, can you just show the audience your nails?
So this is also something that, sparks my curiosity. I've been doing nails on my own, painting. I love them. I'm proud of them. If you want to get your nails done, call me.
So they look so fabulous.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Belinda. We'll let her take a break and we'll bring her back at the end. So if you have any questions for Belinda or Jillian, please drop it in our chat box. All right. See ya, Belinda. So our third guest of the evening is Ama Maat-Gora. Ama is a former CHEN Project mentee and now choreographer extraordinaire. So hi, Ama. Good to see you. Can you introduce yourself and tell us about your background?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jessica, for organizing this, and Neysha. Like she said, my name is Ama Maat-Gora. My pronouns, she, her, we. I'm on Lenni Lenape land. I'm also around the corner from where the Move 9 bombing happened in Philadelphia in 1972, I believe it's a date. I just wanted to acknowledge them. Those are my people, my folk. So yeah, a little bit about my dance background. So my earliest memories of dancing were happening in like school cafeterias and gyms. because my mom would take like a Sunday West African dance class, and I would go along with her and, you know, be following along, trying to catch the step, you know, learning different dances. So some of my earliest, let's say, former dance training was in traditional West African dance. And a lot of that kind of, you know, is still a part of what I do. So when we were growing up, I was living in a household where my parents were sort of climbing the economic chain, I guess. And I was raised in Brooklyn, and when I was about 7 or 8, my family decided to move to Jersey, and my father became a homeowner, and we just couldn't afford excess, right? So I would take some pop-up dance classes here and there, but it was really difficult. So I feel like my early dance training was very like whatever we could get, you know, whatever my mom could negotiate, whatever subsidized or scholarship programs I could be on, those were the programs that I was a part of. So some of my earliest dance experiences in Brooklyn were at Ife Tayo, and then later when we moved to Jersey, I went to Goldman's. I also went to Rod Rogers. I went to another school called the Cheneys. I mean, I was always in a different dance school every other year just because, you know, whatever we could afford at that moment or whatever my mom felt like she could put towards dance, that's sort of how we had things set up. But in general, I just remember always moving. I was always creating. You know, I was one of those kids that was very bossy. So I'd be like, we're all learning this dance. And, you know, it'd be to Destiny Child or something. And I would be like, okay, everyone learn the step. Ready? You know, that just very like into creating and setting work and, you know, creating works, I guess, at home. And so later in life, I feel like a really pivotal moment in my dance career happened in high school. For a long time, I wasn't like the greatest student, but I felt like dance really like centered me or gave me the kind of discipline I needed and showed me that like, oh, you actually can dedicate yourself to something. It just has to be something that you have interest in or something that you're super passionate about. And so, you know, continuing my dance training in West African, I would do West African in high school with Karen Love. And then I was dancing professionally with a small dance company called Zaman, ran by Zakia Atkinson. And I was also working with another Black woman named LaShonda Cheney, who directed and was sort of the founder of La Cheney's Dance School. And I was dancing for all three of these Black women all at the same time. And I think that was a really pivotal moment because I was like, oh, wow, women that look like me who are dancing and creating space for dance. And I think that was super impactful because they were asking me to be a part of their practices. So a lot of the work I was doing early on was a lot of dance theater work. So one of the works that we were doing with Zakia, with Zaman, was basically doing a lot of work about the Holocaust and about genocide and looking at dance not just as a way of entertainment or not looking at contemporary dance as a way of just like, oh, this is just a show, but also thinking about how work or dance can really be turned into a political conversation or incite conversations about politics and, you know, the world that we live in. And that was really impactful for me because I think a big spark went off in my head because I was like, oh my gosh, I want to talk about things that are happening to me, and my identity felt really important at the time because in some ways I didn't know who I was. And at the time when I was about in high school around 14, I had been adopted. So there was like a major life shift happening as I was finding that dance was sort of the thing that was grounding me. And I really leaned into it as an anchor to ground me while all these other things that I kind of didn't have control over were happening around me. And to know that I could locate myself in work, whether I was a part of it or creating it, I think was really, really important. And I had a teacher in high school, her name was, I'm forgetting her name at the moment, but she ran the special dance. Oh, there we go. Candace Pointer-Jor, my high school teacher. She ran a company in the high school called Special Dance. And she was a graduate of Rutgers. She was an excellent teacher. She had us learning about dance history, really prepping us in a lot of ways, now that I think about it, to step into, you know, higher ed and pursue dance in higher education. And, you know, she had a conversation with me, and I remember her telling me, you know, if you want to go to school for dance, you know, you can do that. And it was like all the light bulbs went off, because I was like, oh, I can major in dance, like this is a thing. And it was like a whole new world. And she helped me with all the applications, and we'd sit and we'd talk. And then, you know, my senior year, I had decided to go to Georgian Court University in South Jersey. And that's when I feel like I was introduced to ballet kind of for the first time in a lot of strange ways. Like it's not like I wasn't taking ballet classes before, it's just not in that kind of rigorous way. And so all these new techniques were being put on my body. You know, I'm coming from this West African dance background and sort of this dance theater background, and all this new vocabulary is being added. So it was actually extremely overwhelming at first, as like the shortest, maybe four of four of I don't know, about 30 students out of 30 students, we were 4 Black women, you know, Black girls. And so that was also a very interesting experience. And I remember learning everything and feeling overwhelmed. And I think at some point I would we'd finish ballet class, and every time I'd like go in the bathroom and just cry. Cause I was just like, this is too much. I don't know if I can go on. And I'm not sure exactly what kept me pushing, but I was like, this is just what I have to do, right? And so, you know, we got through the ballet, and, you know, I learned the improvisational techniques and postmodern techniques that were being given to me, and my body really started to change, and I loved it. I was like, oh my God, I think I'm in love with just the bounds of dance, right? It really opened up a new world. And so I started training with Earl Mosley at my time in college. And that's sort of how I met Jessica. I was doing Earl Mosley, and then I had been introduced to Jessica, and I was a CHEN mentee first summer, and that was also an amazing experience. I mean, it connected me to so many people. And then I decided after I finished college that I wanted to learn more. And in my last year of college, I started a dance company called Ma'at Works. Ma'at is my middle name. And so I said to myself, I want to make dance. Like it's really important to me to be making as well as, you know, learning. I want to be making. So I started making work, and most of my work is political work. I'm always talking about Black women in dance. You know, I'm always locating myself in this work. So exploring my queer identity, and contemporizing traditional West African dance and some Caribbean, Trinidadian folklore dance. So that's where I've been with my creative process. And after I graduated from undergrad, I decided to take the sort of the spark that I had in these interests in starting this company, my artworks, and I ended up going to Temple University, where I received my MFA, and now I'm working at Drexel as a professor, and you know, it feels like everything sort of happened really fast. And now I'm in a space where I feel really curious about what dance is becoming for me. And I feel really curious about how all of me is showing up in my movement, in my pedagogy, like how I'm teaching, you know, how I'm being informed by the state of the world. And I feel like for the first time in a long time, I have a lot to talk about, right? Like I'm like, there is so much I can talk about. And so I've really been exploring those things and just taking the gratitude as I receive it. Just the fact that I'm here talking and being given a platform is a really big deal. Because when things were happening with COVID, I wasn't necessarily sure, again, where to locate myself. And so it's nice to like be able to see people who sort of helped with the scaffolding of my artistry, sort of coming back and giving me opportunities to speak and holding space. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and my background, sort of how I've gotten to this point now. Yeah.
Amazing. So when we spoke on the phone prior to this, we talked about breath. Like everybody doesn't get to breathe the same, I think is the words that you said. And so I'm wondering, how do you breathe, or what does breath mean for you?
Yeah, I think I've been learning that breath is a part of rest. And I think as like a Black queer woman, I've learned from the women around me that I had to work and work and work and grind and work. And no one was really teaching me how to rest. And and so I feel like me relating to breath and learning how to breathe through, you know, either if it's in my work, like in my practice, or just in life in general, I'm learning how to breathe by just identifying what I enjoy. It's like I feel like I've taken it down to like the baby steps of like, what does Amma like to do, right? Like very simple. And I'm like, oh, I like to read and I love doing puzzles, and I've become a plant mama to way too many plants. You know, so I feel like I'm re-engaging with my humanity a lot of the times and learning how to be human all over again, because perhaps in some ways or another, I've learned how to not be human, right? Or how to conceal my humanness. And so working with breath and trying to be human has been like a long exhale, like a really long sigh. And I feel like that shows up in a lot of my work and just what I do in general. So I definitely feel like it's one of those things that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, something that I'm constantly going to be doing. Yeah, thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, we're taught to be superhuman, right? Especially as a woman, especially as a minority and queer, and all of the things. You have to be a superwoman. That's very profound to just rest. Another thing that we talked about that I would just kind of love to check back in was the question of where you belong in the dance world. And I'm wondering, at this moment, how does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I feel like where I belong is like, I feel like, I think when I was talking to you, I also said this, like, I feel like I'm existing in many different places. And I feel like I'm acknowledging and accepting that my role in the dance world shifts all the time, right? Like I might be doing arts administration work. I might be doing more liaison, direct communicative work, or I'm in the studio and I'm dancing and I'm working, or I'm choreographing on myself or other dancers, or I'm a part of other people's projects and experiences. So it's just like constantly being able to wear different hats. And also like, I feel like I've been really like giving myself the grace and saying to myself, I'm actually really capable of doing all the things and like doing the hat switches. So also getting comfortable and like, oh, I'm actually really good at this and I can dig, you know, I can dig in this. And then maybe there's some things I'm like, okay, like the organization bit, like the task manager stuff, that's for somebody else, right? But really digging my feet into the things that I do feel comfortable in so that I thrive in those roles and those positions, and being able to identify, you know, where I'm needed when I'm needed. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. You know, everything is a give and a take, and it's a give and a receive. And so identifying where you're needed the most, or where your gifts can apply the most, is that's beautiful. Before we let you go, one more question. I would love to know what this time has meant for you as a human and as an artist, or both.
I think this time has showed me that I can be soft in chaos. And I think that's really revolutionary, because like sort of to the point of what we were talking about earlier, like rest also sort of asks us to be in a different physical mode, or at least for me, it feels like that. Like I have to tell myself not to be the aggressor all the time, or the person that's like assertive all the time, like being able to soften in my body and soften in myself. And I feel like this time has been very revealing that like, oh, all these things can be happening around me and I'm affected by these things. There was a lot of shedding and tears and just like processing and transformation and taking moments, and also being kind to myself, right? Like knowing that my work, even if it's like small, is important, is like really integral. And that was the part that I feel like before I wasn't like able to really grasp, because I was just like, why can't I just change the whole world? You know, kind of position. Whereas now I feel like I'm like, oh, I owe this world this work because I'm good at this work, and this work will continue without me. And that's what's important. Maybe like the legacy is more important than like the immediate shifts. And so this time has been really reflective. I'm like learning how to be softer, learning how to rest, things I thought I was already doing, right? And so this time has been also really revealing in that. I've been feeling like, oh, I just keep like the veil is off. You know, I've been saying that a lot. I was like, nothing can be hidden anymore. You know, the veil is off. We're seeing everything. And so in that, you know, how do we choose to impact the world, and how can we be kind to ourselves while we do it, right? Like activist work doesn't always have to be active in the way that we think it needs to be, right? Like I think there's also revolution in saying everybody take a 20-minute nap. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So beautiful, Amma. Okay, we're gonna let you take a little rest.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll bring you back in at the end for our panel discussion. So any questions you have for Amma, drop it into the chat box. And now we have our fourth guest of the evening, our final guest. We have here with us Evelyn Joy Holscher. Hi, Evelyn.
Hi, how's it going? Thank you so much for having me. It's been so wonderful to listen to all these amazing artists and their stories and kind of how they came to be where they are today. So thank you for holding the space, especially during a quarantine pandemic where, you know, dance has changed and art has changed and it's shifting, but it's still very present. So thank you for holding these conversations.
So welcome. So Evelyn, I want to give you some space to introduce yourself and to the audience, and also tell us a bit about your work.
Yeah, thank you. So like she said, my name is Evelyn Joy Holscher. I'm the founder and artistic director for Spaces of Fontana. Pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I occupy the land of the Jumano, Comanche, and Tonkawa people, today known as Round Rock, just north of Austin, Texas. So I was in New York until March with a crazy adventure. I was very pregnant when the pandemic hit, and 33 weeks pregnant, we decided to leave because we were supposed to have a baby in the middle of Manhattan. And we decided to pack up and drive across the country and just stay with family and have a baby in Houston at my parents' house, and ended up deciding to move after a few months of being down here. So been a quarantine of a lot of change, a lot of shifts, a lot of new discovering of who I am, wearing new hats with being mom, with being homeowner, with being in Texan. So lots of change, but excited to be here, and so excited to kind of have this connection back with New York through Jessica Chen's conversations. So a little bit about me and my story and my history. So I moved to New York in 2014. And spent at the first year being, well, as most freelance artists, working a million jobs and dancing with a lot of different incredible artists. You know, Amma, you mentioned dancing or taking class at Rod Rogers. My first dance job, and one of my first dance jobs in New York, was actually dancing with Rod Rogers. Danced with Isadora Duncan a little bit, and then also did work with Smashworks for a while. Smashworks Dance Collective, who's also doing a lot of really amazing kind of political work. Also danced with Monica Hogan and Ji Yoon On. So lots of freelance work that I was doing. And then I continued to do the entire time I was in New York. But after that first year of being in New York, where I was performing for others and, you know, teaching fitness and teaching yoga, I was really realizing there was something missing, and I felt like I wanted to say something, and I needed to have a voice. And I missed choreography. I had choreographed my whole life. Everybody has been talking about their like earliest memory with dance, and when I was really young, like, I don't know, 3 or 4, I would walk into the living room and stand up and say, "Turn on the music, mommy," and just start dancing. And so I've been creating since I was 3 or 4. And that first year in New York, I felt that miss, like I was missing being able to speak, being able to have a voice. So it kind of coincided with when I got married. So I got married in 2015, and I started a company right after that. And my maiden name is Fontana. So I knew I wanted to use that as a part of our brand, part of my dance company's name. And I was walking in the store in like Barnes and Noble with my husband, and I opened up the Grey's Anatomy book directly to Spaces of Fontana. So it turns out Space of Fontana is an anatomical term coined as the space between your two eyes. So it's actually how your eyes communicate with one another. And as a choreographer, I'm really interested in relationships. I'm interested in how we relate to the world around us, whether it's, you know, physical, spatial, mental, spiritual relationships. And we do that often kind of through our eyes, whether it's gazing at something or avoiding eye contact, or intentionally looking at somebody you love, or looking away and seeing those around you and actually seeing hurt, seeing emotion, seeing those spaces. So that has, so kind of a dual meaning with the name. And that was kind of where we came from and why we got started. And in the past, so that was 2015, we started in January. And since then we created 7 new works, and I've worked with like 12 or 14 different dancers, and we've had 31 or so different performances, including 2 self-productions that we had, many festivals hosted by incredible artists, the Tour Through Queens, performed at the US Open, and even had 1 episode on a local Manhattan TV station in like the early years of work with one of the duets that I created. So lots of really fun experiences, and I'm super thankful for, and especially for me as part of like what I create from. I mean, I mentioned relationships, but I think that ultimately I strive to create art rooted in hope. So in the middle of any sort of trauma or any sort of issues that are kind of arising, I always seek to find hope in the scenario or in the situation. And I strive to kind of that be the essence of all the work that I'm creating, regardless of the story I'm telling with it or the piece I'm creating. So that's a little bit of the background. And I do and really enjoy culture. And as part of the studio, I'm also, I do culture building for the yoga company that I work with. And that's super important to me as far as like the dance space I create. So I like to have a really collaborative nature that's like lots of partnering, and want to like be able to kind of launch people further in their career. So of the like 14 dancers I've had, 7 of them have gone on to create their own work, which is definitely the type of environment that I like want. I want to inspire people to do more than what they're doing now, and feel like they have more of a voice, and that they can go out and they have something to say. And like Amma was saying, like even if one person listens, like that means that you're making a world of difference. So yeah.
Okay. So Evelyn, through this like whirlwind time of changes, having a baby, moving, how were you able to stay grounded during this time?
I will say it's been an emotional journey, and it's been a lot to get here. I like strongly believe in the 4th trimester. So for those of you that are pregnant or have babies, you know what I'm talking about. So it's definitely been a lot of emotional things. I mean, you have a pandemic and an election year, and then you like, it's already enough. And then you throw in having a baby and deciding to uproot your home. Being grounded has been something I've been really striving for. And I have to say the biggest rock in my life is my husband. He is incredible, and he's kind of, it's been that source of familiarity and of home, even though everything has been new. We were living with my parents for a few months, we were living with his parents for a few months, and now we're in a new city. And we're a new family. We have a new 4-month-old in our life. And so the only thing that's been kind of rooting and grounded has been our marriage and our relationship. And that's kind of given me the roots to be able to breathe a little bit. So
what is the 4th trimester?
So, you know, there's 3 trimesters in pregnancy, 9 months. And the 4th trimester is like the theory that you have the 3 months following having a baby. you're still like in that process. There's so much change that's happening in your body. There's so much change that's happening physically, not only for your baby that happens, but also for you personally, like the emotional roller coaster that you go on, the physical journey, that change that happens. Like it's, so be kind to yourself if you ever get into that space. The 3 months after having a baby are real. So, yeah.
I bet. I actually have a friend in Austin that I should connect you with.
Yes, please.
She writes about her journey of becoming a mother and everything. And so, yeah, she's
definitely.
a New York friend that's in Austin. Yeah, so
even better.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to rewind back a little to your time in New York, and I would love to ask you if there was like a significant dance moment that you've had in New York, anything that you would like to share.
Yeah, so actually one of the last performances that I did was that we did with Space of Fontana before leaving, was towards the end of our season in 2019, and I produced a full evening length show called Soft Spot that was all based on my the idea of femininity and the vulnerability that comes with that. After going through I have endometriosis, so it was really based on my journey with endometriosis and having to be super vulnerable from the physical pain that I was feeling, even if it wasn't shown from everybody else. So, but when I had gotten to the point where I needed surgery and I was having the hard time, I really needed to open up to the people around me because I needed their support. And I was blown away by the power and the strength of the vulnerability of women, and that the vulnerability that we all shared in that moment was really so powerful and made us even stronger. And that's what got me through the time. So I created this work around it. And 2 days before we opened, which was about a year after surgery, I found out I was pregnant, and which was, and with endometriosis, it could be possible that you can't have children. So it was very much exciting and very much a miracle in the moment to be able to experience that. And nobody knew, obviously, except my husband and my parents. And there's a part of the work. So I was performing in it also, and the soloist in the work in my mind was me a year ago. She was representing who I was, and I was performing with her. And it was just so, so beautiful and an out-of-body experience to get to dance with myself a year ago when I was in the middle of all that pain, and getting to dance pregnant and a whole year later. So that was definitely a really one of those moments that just will always hold true and dear to my heart, getting to dance with my son that I didn't know was a boy at the time, and getting to have that experience was definitely a highlight of my dance career. Oh, thank you. Still muted.
Yeah.
But
can you tell us a little about She and that production?
Yes. Yeah, so I forgot to mention, one of the biggest works I danced with for the last 5 years was with Jenna Parker Projects, which was She, a choreo play. So I'm one of the original company members for the Off-Broadway run, and She, a choreo play is a choreo play, a term that she coined on sexual violence against women and Sandra Bland. So when we started this work before the Me Too movement. So, and I actually remember the first night that when Donald Trump got elected, we were actually performing, and She, in this conversation when he got elected into primaries back in 2016, and that will always be a really standout moment for being able to perform this work about sexual violence against women and healing during that time. But we have been I worked with them for the last 5 years and still very much connected as they're moving through it. And basically the work was started by Jenna, who's an incredible friend and choreographer and mentee and mentor. And she had the insight to be able to tell women's stories from different kind of iconic, what's the right word? Identities. So there's a mother story and a woman's story and a grandmother story that are all kind of encompassed, told through dance. It's a play, a narrative play, kind of told through movement. as we go through. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds incredible. And so much of what I've been also exploring as an artist, and
Yeah.
the idea of vulnerability, I think, is very strong and powerful. And so I'm wondering, before we bring everybody else back, which we will in a second, if you can just talk about how vulnerability plays in the work that you create.
Yeah, that is a great question. I think that I studied a lot of Brene Brown's work. I don't know if you've heard her. She does a lot of work on shame and vulnerability. And that kind of has been the guiding force for how I create in my rehearsal space. So I often am, I can only speak from my experience and what I know. And so whenever I'm coming up with a new idea, or I have this idea for a project, whatever like the high level concept of what it's on, even if it's a personal journey, like Soft Spot was with endometriosis, the first thing I always start with, like day one in rehearsal, is journaling with my dancers. And so I give them a series of like prompts or questions, and I want them to have their own experience and process with whatever it is. So it's not like, yes, they're speaking my story, but it's also, I want them to put their own story layered onto it. And that's what I was talking with, like the collaborative nature of the work is I want people to feel like my dancers to have an ownership in what they're doing. As a dancer also, I always felt more connected to work that I was able to be a part of the creation process. And so that was definitely really intentional in all of the work that I created. And I find as a performance, when you believe what you're saying in your movement, the audience is able to feel it more, and they're able to connect to it in a different way that's really unique. Even if I have a lot of family that is not at all familiar with modern dance or contemporary dance, but they're like, what does it mean? But they still are able to get
Okay, I think Evelyn is frozen. So right now we're going to bring everyone back. Neysha, Amma, Jillian, hi, welcome back. Amma and Neysha. Okay, great. So I think Evelyn will be back. But at this point, I'm going to just hand it over to Neysha to start our Q&A. Neysha, turn on your sound, and there you go.
Okay. Hi. So I have a question for Jillian. How has improvisation and contemporary dance changed your mindset, not just towards dance, but towards life? This is a question for me because I absolutely love improv, and just I feel like I was the only one in my, graduating class, or like in high school when I started dancing, I was the only one like, yeah, I love improv. Everybody else was like shuddering. So how has that changed your, I know it's changed your mindset in dance, but how has that reflected in your life?
Cool question. I think that it's hard to connect it to life. I mean, I think that life is improvisational, right? Like that is like the baseline for those of us who have the luxury of flexibility. I'm improvising my life every single day. And so the moment that you become completely like one track minded and like, this is how my day, my week, my month, my year, my 10 years needs to go, you open yourself up to be devastated, right? So we always have to be ready to pivot and make decisions in the moment in the same way we do in improv that we're gonna find beauty in, right? So we have to, and dance is like in so many ways the epitome of being in the moment, right? Like the second it happens, it's gone, and it's like a microcosm for our whole entire lives, right? And so when you're doing improvisational movement, you want to give each and every moment its full value and have care with each and every moment. And I think that is what we do with our lives, hopefully.
Yeah, amazing. I know I threw a very ambiguous question at you, but I just like to dig deeper. But we have another question for you. So as an arts leader, what trends do you see in the dance world?
Okay. I think from like really like a really positive, what I'm seeing that's happening positively is a questioning or even like a rejection of traditional structures and body types and spaces that we dance in. That's really interesting to me, like that's happening now, and I'm excited to be active during that time. And also this, like, there was a time, and not too long ago, that like if you were talented enough, you got to be a jerk. And those days are over. Like you don't get, I don't care how creative and how good your work is, like nobody has time for you to be a jerk. And I just love that that's just like, nope, not anymore. So that's like my like things that I'm excited about, trends that I mean, I guess if you can call it a trend. And then there are others that it may sound like I'm being critical, and I guess in some ways I am, but there are things that I'm noticing that are just on my radar that I'm holding myself accountable to, and I'm also just like encouraging and challenging other artists to recognize that this is maybe happening. So I hope that I don't sound negative or like seem like I'm calling anybody out on this, but there is an increasing like almost pressure to be overly cerebral about our work, to the point where sometimes it's like it's putting us in a position where if we don't deliver on the thing that we said in our grant proposal or in our snippet, like we make ourselves out to be like on this like super deep intellectual journey, and then you see the piece on stage and you have to ask yourself and assume that your audience is asking, did I see that in the piece? Like, did they deliver on that? So I think that there's so much value in us saying like, it's not enough anymore just to like put some moves together. It's got to have a lot more substance to it, but we have to challenge ourselves to make sure that the substance is actually showing up. And similarly, like this whole like concept of like researching intensely during process, we also have to be careful that we're not just doing it because it's what we're supposed to be doing because it's trending. And is it showing up in the piece in a productive way that has moved the piece forward? So that's kind of like the two trends that are on my radar. It's kind of like also recognizing that when you get too cerebral, when we start to unpack things, and you can no longer, it's kind of like philosophy, when you can no longer assume that anything is a given or a truth that we've all come to terms with that is objectively true, then you're kind of left like with nothing and no platform. And then you have to rethink all of these really basic things. And then everything falls apart. And in order to move the art form forward as a whole, we have to like agree that like there are certain universal truths that we can all agree upon, that so that we can build and move forward and we don't go backwards. It's kind of like, and somebody mentioned being a plant mom, Amma, and it's like kind of like, you don't want to pull the roots up of your plant to check and make sure it's growing, right? You want to like create a fertile situation and do the right things and trust that the roots are taking hold. And every time you pull it back up to check it out, you're actually doing harm. So if we're over analyzing the process, we may be like holding our growth back a little bit as a community. So that's all I have to say about that for now.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. I think that a lot of us can be too hard on ourselves and, want to deliver for a certain idea and not appreciate that we can all, say we're going to go on this journey, right? But it ends up opening another door to go this way. And that could also be very, accepted, and it can be viable. It can be something that can show you a different truth. And yeah. I agree.
Yeah. And also like, remember the end result is generally, unless it's specifically a research-based project, like generally the result is that you want it to be seen by people and appreciated and understood by people. So I think sometimes in pursuit of this goal, we forget like, well, what does it look like? Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be beautiful or gorgeous or easy on the eyes, but does it challenge your audience? Is it succeeding in what you meant to do? And is it interesting? And like, do people want to look at it? Like, have you created something that people, your audience, you don't want them to be held hostage by like seeing the result of your research, right? Like, at the end of the day, there is still like a bit of a performative element to it, and entertainment, dare I say it, so we want to make sure that we remember it deserves to be seen. Does it do that job, right?
Mm-hmm. And Evelyn, I just wanted to give you a chance to, finish what you were saying before you paused. It was so great, and I was so into it, and all of a sudden it's
I know, I thought that, oh man, my computer, I don't know what happened. It just said, you're now no longer going to be able to use me. So I'm on my phone now. So, technology life. I think I was talking about she, and I was saying that you were talking about vulnerability, and I was saying that's what drew me to that work also. And something that I think is really powerful about it is, and like, I guess kind of similar to what Jillian's saying, is it challenges the audience to also be vulnerable. It was kind of like the idea of, when I had to be vulnerable myself, when I was walking through the journey with endometriosis, that in itself, me choosing to do that was brave, which gave other people the opportunity to be brave and be vulnerable themselves and deal with something that they didn't know they needed to deal with, or kind of go to that space. So we do a lot of work in SHE with residencies and universities, doing a lot of work about healing. So when I was talking to Jessica a while ago, we were talking about how, she started and it was, nobody was telling their stories. So that's what it was. It was the Me Too, essentially. It was sharing stories, and it kind of ended. The most recent version of it was all about healing, of the like, what do we do now, and that challenge for what's next. So that kind of, and that's goes with like the ever evolving art of listening to what the world needs in that moment. So yeah, that was what I was going to say. Thank you. Sorry for technology.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it's bound to happen, honestly, in this little universe of technical difficulties. We gotta have one. Yeah, for sure. So, Belinda and Ama. Oh, were you saying something? Oh, we're good? Okay. Belinda and Ama, I have a question for you. What advice would you give young queer and people of color, young queer / people of color who are aspiring dancers? What advice would you give to them? I guess we can go with Ama first. It looks like you're ready.
If I could give a piece of advice, I would just say remain true. And I feel like that's like super cliche, but I think that was like really difficult for me, especially in the dance world. Like, again, like finding myself, locating myself, identifying myself. Being authentic is hard. So that's a reality that I feel like if we can accept, then we get better at getting up to try again every time. So like, to keep trying to be honest and truthful in the work and in process. Yeah.
Thank you. And Belinda?
For me, it would be not to wait for the golden ticket from the outside to tell your story. So basically, make space for yourself, be loud. You're enough, you're golden. You're enough just the way you are, in all the complexity and all the great areas where your identities lie upon, like, you know, if you don't see that, you know, you can fit in on, you know, in any space that you see outside, then like make your own space and speak up.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it was two very like concise yet very important things that are very hard for us to all get, you know. So yes, thank you. I just wanted to bring that up because that's like an important topic and it's part of both of your identities, and it's very important for us to share to the next generation of like queer dancers in the space.
Absolutely.
For Amma, I have another question. So since you said you were a professor at Drexel, also congratulations, that's like huge. What would you like to share with the next generation of dancers, or what are you, you know, already sharing in your curriculum with the dancers that you're teaching?
Yeah, so I'm working a lot in like community-based learning as it relates to dance. So I feel like I'm always talking to students about like meeting people eye to eye. Like it seems again, like all these things seem super cliche, and then you go to actually practice them and they're like a lot more difficult than we anticipate, right? So in their artistry, in their work with the community, looking people eye to eye and meeting people where they're at, being able to really see people, and also the value of what it means to be seen, especially as a Black woman, especially as a queer woman, like it means something to be seen. So I feel like I'm always teaching them those things, especially if they're not coming from places where that's even a thought, right? Like, oh, I'm always seen, or, you know, or it's just, or like, you know, it's just not in their like their forefront. And as they think about crafting work. So I feel like that's what I'm pushing forward for the next generation of dancers. Like sort of like what Belinda was saying, be loud, you know, be really loud and not be afraid to take up space, you know, and I think that's something I'm always employing my students to do, to take up space, because they're very like shy, especially on the Zoom. So like even in the virtual capacity, like pushing our boundaries. Yeah.
For sure, thank you. Evelyn, can you give us an example of a journal prompt that helps the creative process? I am very heavily into journaling. My professors also taught me to journal a lot, and I have like 3 that are filled since I graduated, like from junior year. So if you could just share like a prompt or 2 that are very important and you think could help with like the creative process.
Yeah, that's a great question. I apologize, my son woke up, so if you hear screaming in the background, that's him. Don't worry, my husband's out there. He's not by himself. So I think that I have a few that I always kind of start with, but then I also gauge questions based on what I had been inspired by. So like if I had already been working with something, I'll kind of pull questions kind of based on whatever that work is. So to help people go into the same vulnerable space that I dove into. But I always like to start before going into that like heady space. I always like to start with kind of creative writing in order to kind of clear people's minds and get them thinking not looking for the right answer when they're writing, but just to write. So I always do this exercise with my dancers where first you write for like, you can't pick up your pen until I say stop, and we'll go for, 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. And I say like, write about a childhood memory that comes up, and then just have them like go into the childhood memory, or, write about an embarrassing moment, or, paint your perfect, like scenic escape route. Or if you were to, get $1 million, what you do with it. Just something kind of silly just to get them going. And then each one I go, like every question I kind of go a little bit more in depth and a little bit more serious, and then dive deeper into the like, what does love mean to you? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? What is femininity? Or whatever kind of that comes up. So that way their first kind of thought of, do I have to get the right answer, is
like calm to the side, and they can just talk from experience without needing the right answer. And then from there, I'll kind of have them like pull out words that stand out, and then we'll create or like improv based on those words or those ideas.
Nice, thank you. Yeah, it's kind of like breaking down their wall first to get them like, oh, let's think about just something like recent or like something that isn't so heavy, and then getting into the nitty-gritty, like, yeah, let's do it.
Exactly, especially if people don't have experience with journaling. Like if you don't often journal, it can be really like it can block you a lot from actually being present and being authentic. So doing exercises like that kind of release the mind a little bit and help your head, like brain, get into a different headspace to be able to kind of go into more of a creative space.
Nice. All right, thank you. We have a general question. We have 2 general questions for everyone. What is it that you need now in this moment, both as an artist as well as a human? We can start with Jillian. If you need a couple of questions, like a minute or 2 to like sit there and like, that's fine.
Yeah, it's interesting because the first my like impulse was like, nothing, I'm fine, everything's fine, like I'm always fine. And also the second impulse is that like nobody's ever asked me that before, because you know, I think especially when you're in the leadership position, you feel like you're the provider. So I think you know, if I had my way and tomorrow I could get something needed, I think it would just be a small team of people to delegate tasks to, who were as invested in the vision as I was. So I don't know, I'd love to clone myself and just have like worker bees that like know what we're trying to do. But all in all, like I'm not super duper worried about myself and my needs right now. I'm okay. I'm more worried about somebody who probably has a better answer for that, and like what is it that like that I can do, being as comfortable as I am, and like, you know, what can I do better and differently for someone else? Because you know, I joke, but I really am. I'm okay. I'm fine.
Okay, yeah, that's a valid answer. You might not just feel like you need anything right now. That's cool. Alma, I guess you can go with you. We're gonna go like in a little circle.
Yeah. Funding. Really transparent. Money, so I can make my work and be great. Space to take vacation, money to take vacation. Can't say when's the last time I've been on vacation. Those things would be nice. I feel like, again, talking about rest, more time to rest. Being a professor is really intense. Definitely feels like a lot to manage sometimes. So like, I'm always just like, whenever I could get a little hour nap in. So I feel like those are the things I'm needing: some rest, some funding, and just like, you know, I just want more space. I want more space in the dance world sometimes, you know, I want more space. So I feel like I'm making that.
Yeah, those are all very real like things that we all need, and we have to, I mean, you're here on the live. Hopefully there's somebody on here who will get you that funding or donate a couple of dollars. You know what I mean? We all need it. These are very true things, especially right now. And rest, yeah, you are doing a lot, you know, with people who go to school and are your students and their minds, and just constantly, it's a lot. I just commend you for your hard work, all 4 of you. So thank you for continuing to make art, and I hope we all get rest and love and vacation and money, abundance. We need it. So yeah, Belinda, what is it that you need now in this moment, both as an artist as well as a human?
I feel like both as an artist and human, what I'm focusing right now is stillness, like lots of moments of stillness in order to be able to listen to my true self. As a human and echoing as an artist also, my priority right now is to make this heart space, like the Belinda in here, happy and at peace. So I feel like, you know, anything that's like going on outside of that, like the little interaction or like people asking for your commitment for this, for that, like my priority right now is to check in with her. Is it okay? And listen, like that stillness to be able to listen to my body, because I feel like in the body like lies in the body lies the wisdom deeper beyond philosophy. You know, I mean that's why we're dancers, but that's also that's what I believe in. You know, I feel like my body communicates to me more than my words can speak. Like I'm an immigrant. I know English is not my first language, but I feel like words can't really express my thoughts to the capacity that I want. So I feel like my body, my temple inside is like where um, lies the truth. So my focus and also what I need is like more time, space, and stillness to be able to listen to her. And also, I feel like echoing with what Ama was saying is just transparency, you know? And I feel like a lot of how we've been operating, there's a lack of transparency when it comes to asking for artists to do this work. I feel like there's lack of balance between like what you're expecting and what you're offering. And there's not enough transparency when it comes to that. It's like, oh, can you make this, and I want this world, but like this is what I can give you. Like, no, with like I feel like there's not consideration of like my time, my energy, like it's just not balance. That's how I feel. I feel like people don't understand the nuances and the complexity in making art and I'm offering you my soul, you know, and this is important. And I think, yes, it takes the creative and the production team in order to like make things happen. But I feel like there's a lack of transparency and communication and understanding when it comes to the two coming together. You know, people are a lot of like I'm speaking as like, you know, like just a general observation that I've seen around me with my friends and my creative friends. Like people are doing a lot of like, you know, even within activist work itself, like you're branding yourself as an organization that cares about mental health care, women's rights, this and that. But in the process of making things happen, are you actually practicing that? Or are we still operating in a system that focus and prioritize on the seeing our worth in productivity and like how this like instant, like everything has to be quick and, you know, like these kind of ideals. So that's what I have in mind.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue to the second question. Evelyn, you still can answer the first question, but I also will pose a second question. And it's going to be the last question because I don't think I see anything from our chat. But what is one way that you would like to see the dance world challenge and question the old? Because we're kind of like getting into that with, you know, your answer, Belinda. So thank you, because it kind of like led into the second question. But if you'd like to answer that as well, and you know, whoever wants to answer after Evelyn, just pop your hand up or unmute yourself. You know, you're free.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. To answer the first one about what I need as a human and as an artist, I mean, I think Alma hit it, like we all need funding in order to be able to create the art. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the second question of like and what Belinda was saying of like the value of artists and like being able to recognize that as a society, that the importance that it has in the world. And what a difference it can make, because, you know, she was saying like, not only like, she's like, I speak with my body, that's how I process things, but not like, that's just as an artist, but as an audience member and as like people that aren't artists, they don't always have the words to put to it either. And they don't have the gift of being able to create artists, like to create. And so art is so important because it is able to help individuals process things that they didn't even know was there, which I think is the value of the work they're creating. Because not only is it activist, it's like it has the ability to move a society, to move a system, but it also has the power to affect change in a human, in that person in a moment. And so I think elevating the value of the artist, and understanding that also needs the financial support in order to create it. We can't do it for free. But as a human and an artist, I think like if I'm being very real and vulnerable right now, I think permission to be where I'm at. I think that as a New Yorker, even though I'm a Texan now, as a New Yorker, as a type A, as somebody that's always wanting to do and to create, but I'm also a new mom, and I am, you know, we're in a pandemic, like there's still a lot of that happening. And I saw somebody post this earlier and it gave me permission. And I think that for me, it's like continuing to give that to myself and maybe speaking it out for somebody listening, like you have permission to be where you are and to be present. And that doesn't make you less of an artist. That if you're not performing right now, if you're not doing XYZ, you're still an artist, you're still you. And that's like what I'm giving myself right now is like, even if right now, because I have a 4-month-old, if me creating in this space and having these conversations or doing things on a smaller scale, I'm still an artist, I'm still who I am. And the time will come when it's supposed to be able to branch wider. And so yeah, give yourself permission. That's to be where you are, to be present, to be true.
Yeah, I agree. It's really hard right now because, you know, a lot of us aren't performing, and Jessica and I were always talking about like, this was supposed to be like our season right now. And we're just grateful to have everyone, you know, here talking with us and continuing to like bring people together with dance, because that's what it is, you know, for at the end of the day. So yeah, thank you. Jillian, if you want to answer the second question.
Sure. So not to harp on this whole funding issue, but I'm going to harp on it. I'm going to push it a little further. So in terms of questioning the structures, I don't know how, but I wonder, like, can we stop relying on foundational money and private donors? How do we get away from that or add to that? How do we get the corporate world interested in what we're doing? There is money to be had that is not going to us that maybe it could, should, would be at some point. And it's like, it's a beautiful and wonderful thing that we have a fan base and specific individuals that support our work, but you can't fully rely on it. You know, when you look at like stories like what happened with Cedar Lake, or, you know, even if you do finally like hit that gold mine and you find 1 or 5 or 10 people that decide to support you, there may be an end to that at some point. And so it's like, how do you set yourself up to keep going without depending on, you know, somebody whose tastes and interests may change at any moment, and also having to jump through a very specifically designed hoop that is created by a grant making organization that you've got to like fit into this mold to fit through it in order to get that funding. And then once you do that one project that was funded by that one foundation, like you're starting back at square one. So like, how do we innovate the way that we go about the funding? And it does tie to the way that we value artists. And I don't really fully have the answers, but it's something that I actively pursue. And I'm always looking at like small businesses and corporate, like how do we collaborate with them? You know, even like tech startups, like how are there ways that we can find funding that can really support us and also go beyond the project-based thing? And what will it take for them? Because really essentially a grant is like an exercise in you showing grant organizations that you can be trusted with money. like, so why don't you trust us, and how do we prove to you that we can be trusted with money and we're going to do something amazing and fantastic with it without you designing it for us? And then finally, I would love to see, and this also ties into the way that we value artists, is how do we make dance like the go-to art form? Like oftentimes if somebody fancies themselves like, I love art, and they like feel like having an art day, like sure, they're all gonna like go to the Museum of Modern Art, which is wonderful and fantastic, or like, oh, let's go to the opera and like let's do these like really traditional things like to get our art in, and we can feel satisfied with ourselves that we consumed art. But then it's like, ooh, contemporary dance, ooh, like I don't, you know. So like how do we invite the general art appreciator to recognize that dance is just as much of a valid form as anything else, and get them interested in it, and watch with a critical eye and not just assume that it's all the same, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. We're all bringing up like really great ways to, I feel like, continue answering the question more and more, and one day we'll get to the bottom of it. It'll come. Amma, do you have any last words that you would like to add on?
Yeah, sure. I feel like the changes I'm interested in seeing is maybe like a reprioritize, like, or just like a value thing, like West African dance not being the other of dance, right? Like it is a very difficult form to learn. The value of it should be just as much as any other form, and or just like folklore forms in general, like being sort of like always on the back burner, and like people like myself who are contemporizing these traditional practices, like these things are happening, right? And like just like the value system. So like I'm interested in seeing that on a university level, but also in the dance world, you know. And I don't want to be tokenized either, you know, like there's that fine line of like, oh my God, you're the African act. And it's like, yikes, you know, like yikes. Africa is a huge continent with lots of different kind of dance. I'm specifically coming from the West African region. It would be even more specific, like Ghana, right? And like Nigeria. So it's like very just like, again, like I just want to lift, I want to lift that up. I want people to, or even like dancers, audience, I mean, everyone to see the value system of like polyrhythmic dance, and the difficulty to, I mean, I've had people tell me like, oh, well, it's not as hard as ballet. And I'm like, yikes. And then like, have you ever tried taking any African dance classes? Because it's really not that easy. So that's what I want. I want to see more light to things that are not in the Western like context. Sometimes I'm just wanting more light, and like light on the fact that traditional practices are being contemporized right now so much. You know, we are working in the contemporary as well. You know, all my postmodern training did not go out the door, nor did my ballet, nor did my jazz. Like all of that influences my movement just as well as the West African dance. So that's like something I'm wanting, or just wanting to see more of, because it's happening right in small pockets.
Yes. Well, thank you, ladies, all four of you, for being so strong and just leaders in our dance world, and, you know, continuing to believe in it today, no matter where we're at, if we're a professor, if we're a mom, if we're a choreographer, if we're a dancer, if we're doing side hustles right now, you know, we all have to continue to believe in this thing that we love so much. And just thank you for answering the questions and coming into the space and being accepting of, you know, everyone and each other. And thanks for joining me. And I'm just going to pass it on to Jessica. But before we do that, sorry, I forgot. Let's take a screenshot just really quickly before we end everything. All right, let me get this ready. Okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1. Perfect. And thank you so much for having me, Jessica.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so thanks, Neysha. She's in charge of the screenshot every week because I forget about things like that. So to our audience, thank you so much for joining us. Please follow these beautiful, brave ladies and artists. If you are able to donate to the arts, there is their information in our info box on this video. And there's also information on how you can join CHEN Project's annual fund. But please follow and support these ladies. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our episode 5 of the Core Choreography Artist Talks. We have one more episode to go next week, next Tuesday, October 20th at 6 p.m. You can see if you missed any part of this episode, you can catch it afterwards. And you can also catch any of our previous episodes as well. Next week is our season finale, like I told you, and we have Michaela Peterson, Charlie Santagato, and Annie Heath. They will be our 3 artists that we're featuring that evening. And lastly, please save the date for our video launch party, November 1st. It's a Sunday, day after Halloween. Come in your costumes if you want, and it'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll send details shortly. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Did you